What's up, everybody? Today I'm going to be doing a book review for possibly the greatest weightlifting book to have ever been written, The Glenn Pendlay Method by Seb Ostrowitz. Stay tuned. Now, if you don't know who Glenn Pendlay was, Glenn was one of the most influential coaches in the United States, with over 100 national champions in the youth, junior, and senior level for weightlifting. So this book is basically a compilation of all of his methods and what he did to get his athletes as strong as possible. So I want to go ahead and dive into what the goal of the book was when Glenn, he always said he was going to write a book, but he never really got around to it. What the goal of the book was and how Seb accomplished it. So first off, the goal of the book, he says it here in the beginning of it, is that it was something that a beginner can understand and implement, but also something that could stretch the mind of advanced athletes and coaches. And this book 100% does this. On the whole, most of the book is very beginner friendly. Any person, I think, could pick this book up, read it, and then have a good understanding of how to implement and write a training program for themselves for, easily the first 3 years of their training. So that was the goal of the book. He 100% achieves that. There are some moments in there that can get a little bit complicated, but that's there to help stretch the mind of the advanced athlete and coach. On the whole, Beginners is a very beginner-friendly book to learning weightlifting. So if you're a coach out there that is interested in learning more about weightlifting and implementing training program, maybe you're a CrossFit coach that's starting to get more into weightlifting, or maybe you did weightlifting in high school and you're starting to pick it back up and want to get back into it, this is a fantastic intro to that. So some standout moments. This book 100% demonstrates the importance that Glenn found in strength training. He thought of weightlifting as a strength sport, not a technique sport, which means that most of his work was done in figuring out how to get athletes stronger so that they would improve their total rather than trying to eke out 1% increases in their technique. And you really get the idea of that in this. Glenn was in a constant search for the next best thing in strength training, and he would try anything. What I think was really admirable about him as a coach is many coaches, especially inexperienced coaches, will always also be on the constant search for the next best thing. But where they tend to lack is that while they're searching for the next best thing, they leave behind the tried and true. Glenn was amazing at constantly looking for the next thing in training, but also staying with the tried and true. He would continue to follow what he knew worked, and then when something popped onto his radar that he thought might make a difference, he would implement it, but not at the sacrifice of completely dumping what already works. All right, so that was one of the most admirable things about Glenn as a coach. I think this book does a fantastic job of covering the wide breadth of methods that Glenn tried and implemented, and what worked, what didn't, what kind of worked, what kind of didn't, while also separating from the opinion of the author. So Seb says this in the beginning, is that he wanted to write Glenn's book. He didn't want to write his book about Glenn. And I think he does a fantastic job of this. If there is ever any moment where Seb kind of disagrees with whatever Glenn was talking about, he makes it, which is very, very rare in here, but he does make it known in there that this is what his opinion was and what he saw, whether or not Glenn actually implemented it. So, on the whole, as far as the methods go, we go through everything from the length of a training cycle. He goes through some example training programs and example cycles for an advanced, intermediate, and beginner. He goes through the Pendlay method of strength progression, which is a very interesting read. This is the thing that I'm going to come back to the most. Talks about the importance of squats and why we do fives all the time. He talks about Glenn's opinions on deadlifts and how he originally did not like using them, and then as he got closer to the end of his life, he started programming deadlifts more for people. And then some of the more interesting things, like his use of EMOMs, or every minute on the minute, as opposed to doing sets of 2 to 3 reps. And then something else, snakes and ladders, which was an interesting way to apply auto regulation for athletes who, you get basically with this, you get rewarded for being consistent and then punished for not being consistent through this style of training. And it's actually really, really effective. He talks about isometrics and the use of them. He talks about the history of isometrics and then how Glenn came to use them and what the difference was a little bit when he started using them. If you've ever done isometrics for weightlifting, it is brutal, but it's a fantastic way to get strong. He talks about bands, which when maybe a year, I think it was my second training camp with him, is when he started really getting into bands, and he wrote West Side for Weightlifting, which is a fantastic read, really interesting, very controversial at the time. I remember him getting into so many arguments about using bands for squats, pulls, and then for snatches and clean and jerks. And then just kind of remembering on my experience with Glenn implementing bands with us at a training camp. We would work up to a top single on a power clean with bands, and then once we failed, meaning either we couldn't get under the bar fast enough or we got pulled down into a squat, then we would take the bands off and continue working up, and every single person there PR'd their PR'd their power clean. So it's such an interesting idea that he was willing to try things that other people would not be willing to try. And it worked, but he would 100% go for things that even if other people thought of them as controversial, he didn't care. He just wanted to make everybody stronger. That was it. And then the book finishes up with learning the lifts. So what Glenn's progression for teaching the lifts were, with some pictures in here for you to reference your positions. And all in all, I 100% think that this is the most digestible weightlifting book that exists. It gives you exactly what you need to basically get to an intermediate to advanced level as a weightlifter, and nothing more. I think it's, if I were to recommend a book to anybody, it would be the Glenn Pendlay Method. This gives you everything that you need to know about the sport of weightlifting. 100% recommend it, guys. If you want to get this book, you can find it at the link below the video. I'm going to link that down there. Make sure you're following Weightlifting House on Instagram, and then also make sure you follow their Weightlifting House store account. I know they're trying to grow that, and that's probably where you'll see more things like this pop up. Guys, I hope you found this review really useful. If you have any questions about the book, feel free to shoot me a message. And you can stay up to date on all things Big Ben Strength and Conditioning by following us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and then make sure you sign up for our newsletter. That's going to be the biggest thing that I'm pushing this next year, between YouTube content and the newsletter. Those are the two big things that I'm really trying to push. So make sure you sign up for the newsletter. You can do that by going to our website, www.bigbendsc.com, and you'll get a pop-up to sign up for that. We're going to be sending out exclusive deals on our store, as well as updates on only the best content that we are putting out. So make sure you sign up for that. Thanks, guys. Bye.